right, hang on, boys and girls. Lesson 1-9 is where we really start getting into Algebra 1 content. We're done with the science stuff with unit analysis. We're done with the middle school review with order of operations on all of that. And now we're really going to start getting into some algebraic concepts that are going to lead us into our real work that we're going to be doing for the year. So let's go. All right, guys, lesson 1-9, as I said, is one of the first real algebraic type lessons, but I'm still going to try to get through it as quickly as possible because there's not a whole lot of information in this one. We do have a vocabulary word to talk about before we get too deeply into this, so turn back to your glossary real quick, and we're going to define the standard form of a polynomial. Standard form of a polynomial is simply expressing a polynomial by putting the terms in descending exponent order. And I'm just gonna, I know I don't usually show you examples on vocabulary words, but just real quickly, that means if you have something like 3x plus x squared plus 5, standard form would just mean you're gonna rearrange this so that your biggest exponent is first, then your next biggest, and then your 1, remember that's got a little x to the 0 power because it's not there. So then you would put your constant last. So that's all standard form means. All right, so let's go ahead then and talk about the notes. Our learning target for this lesson is going to be that we can add polynomials. Mr. Thomas Wick has talked about the fact that adding polynomials that polynomials just means you have more than just 2 terms. You've got 3 or more terms that you're trying to add, or just more terms. So adding polynomials is simply a matter of combining like terms with a little bit of order of operations dashed in just for fun. Don't know why we made those blanks so small. Sorry about that. You can write above or below or however you can make it fit. There are a couple different methods for approaching these, and I'm going to show you both ways, and it is 100% up to you which way you prefer to go. With both of them kind of look back at the way you were taught to add as kids when you were just adding normal numbers. When you first got introduced to like 3-digit numbers, you kind of have different ways of approaching that. It is important that you remember that you have to have like terms, which means they have to have the same variable and the same degree. So we put this little reminder here to make sure that you've got that. You might want to highlight that. They can only be added or subtracted if they have the same variable and same degree, which we call like terms. All right. So let's go ahead and get straight into an example because that's all this is going to be. The horizontal method relies on you remembering that you can only add like terms. Basically, you're saying, okay, I've got this 2x plus 5y, and yeah, it's in parentheses, but that's really a grouping issue because then I'm also adding 3x minus 2y. Remember that we have the property of, the associative property of addition that says that if all I'm doing is adding here, I can group them however I want, which means I can take this 2x that's like terms with this 3x, and I can go ahead and add those together, or use my commutative property to change the order so that those are near each other, and use the associative property to group them. And then I can say, okay, now I've got these other like terms, this 5y and this negative 2y. Make sure you're paying attention to that minus sign. That's a negative 2y. And I can say, okay, I've got a 5y and I've got a minus 2y or a negative 2y. And I'm going to kind of group those together. And now I'm just combining like terms, right? 2x plus 3x is 5x. 5y minus 2y is positive 3y, so I'm going to put a positive. And that's my horizontal method. That goes back to when you were first learning to add, and you had 2 plus 3, and you just had them right next to each other, and you wrote 5. The vertical method, once things got more complicated, and you had 12 plus 17, then you kind of made sure your ones place was on top of each other and added those, and then made sure your tens were on top of each other and added those. So we're going to do that with the vertical method. What it says is line these polynomials up so that your like terms are stacked on top of each other. So we have 2x plus 5y, and I'm going to add to that 3x minus 2y. When I add that, I'm going to add these like terms, 5y minus 2y, or 5y plus negative 2y. Either way you think about it, you end up with positive 3y. And then I'm going to take my 2x plus 3x over here and say 2x plus 3x is 5x. In both cases, I end up with 5x plus 3y. It's just kind of approaching it from a different mindset, and it's up to you which mindset you find to be easier. Right? Go ahead and try some practice. It really doesn't get any more complicated than that. If you have any questions, let us know.